The music was loud, the lights were bright, and laughter echoed across the small community fairground. But in the middle of all that noise, Daniel Harper felt completely alone. He had only come because his daughter begged him to. 3 months earlier, Daniel had lost his wife, and since then life had felt like walking through fog. Every morning he woke up tired. Every night he went to bed pretending to be strong for the one person who still needed him, his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. She was the reason he kept moving forward, even when his heart felt heavy. But tonight, something strange was about to happen, something that would change everything. A brightly colored banner hung near the center stage that read Community Challenge Night, Games, Dares, and the Longest Kiss Contest. People gathered around, laughing, teasing each other, cheering as couples stepped up to try ridiculous challenges. Daniel had no interest in any of it. Yet somehow, by the end of the night, he would step onto that stage, and the moment that followed would reshape his life in ways he never imagined. Before we continue, take a second to support this channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us that life can still surprise us even after heartbreak, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Daniel stood near the edge of the crowd, holding a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Lily ran around nearby with a group of kids, her laughter occasionally breaking through the music like sunlight through clouds. That laugh was the only thing keeping him together. For months, Daniel had done everything he could to be both mother and father. He packed lunches, braided Lily's hair badly every morning, read bedtime stories even when exhaustion made his eyes burn. Sometimes after she fell asleep, he sat alone in the kitchen staring at old photographs, wondering how life had changed so quickly. The fair was supposed to be a distraction. Instead, it reminded him how much of life he felt disconnected from. Around him, couples held hands. Friends joked loudly. The smell of popcorn and grilled food drifted through the air. It felt like the whole town had gathered to celebrate something Daniel no longer felt part of. Then Lily appeared beside him, breathless and smiling. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement. She tugged on his arm and pointed toward the stage where the host was shouting enthusiastically into a microphone. Another challenge had just ended, and the crowd was clapping wildly. Daniel smiled weakly and nodded, pretending to be interested, but Lily had that determined look she inherited from her mother. She grabbed his hand and started pulling him toward the stage. Daniel resisted at first, laughing nervously, shaking his head. He had no intention of participating in anything, especially not something called a longest kiss dare. Yet Lily's excitement was impossible to ignore. She believed her dad could do anything, and Daniel realized that sometimes being a parent meant stepping into awkward moments just to make your child smile. By the time he understood what was happening, Lily had already volunteered him. The crowd cheered as the host announced a new participant, a single dad brave enough to try the final challenge of the night. Daniel felt his face turn red as people clapped and laughed encouragingly. He almost backed out. But when he glanced down and saw Lily looking up at him with proud, shining eyes, something inside him softened. He walked onto the stage. The host explained the rules dramatically. 2 participants would attempt to hold the longest kiss. Whoever lasted the longest would win the challenge prize, a large gift basket from local businesses and a weekend family resort voucher donated by the town council. Daniel hadn't realized there was a prize. That resort trip alone would mean everything to Lily. Still, there was one small problem: Daniel didn't have a partner. The crowd murmured playfully while the host scanned the audience for volunteers. For a moment, Daniel wished the ground would open beneath him. Then someone stepped forward. She walked onto the stage quietly, almost shyly, as the crowd parted for her. Her name was Emily Carter. Emily had lived in town for nearly 2 years but rarely attended events like this. She worked at the local bookstore and spent most evenings reading behind the counter. Many people knew her face, but few knew her story. 2 years earlier, she had gone through a painful divorce and moved to the town hoping for a fresh start. Since then, she kept her world small, simple, safe. But tonight, something about the awkward single father standing on stage, clearly uncomfortable yet trying his best for his daughter, made her heart soften. She didn't step forward for the contest. She stepped forward because she saw someone who looked as lonely as she sometimes felt. The crowd cheered as Emily joined Daniel on stage. The host laughed dramatically, building suspense like it was the final round of a championship. Daniel and Emily stood awkwardly a few feet apart, both unsure how they had ended up here. But something unexpected happened in that quiet moment. They looked at each other and smiled, not the loud, playful smile people use for crowds, a small, understanding smile, the kind strangers share when they both know life hasn't been easy. The countdown began. The crowd started shouting numbers loudly. 10, 9, 8. Daniel's heart pounded. He wasn't thinking about the challenge anymore. He was thinking about how strange life could be. Just hours earlier, he had been sitting alone in his kitchen, debating whether he even wanted to attend this fair. Now he stood on a stage with hundreds of people watching. 7, 6, 5. Emily took a small breath and nodded reassuringly, not because she cared about winning, but because she wanted Daniel to know he wasn't alone in the awkwardness. 4, 3, 2, 1. The crowd erupted as the challenge began, but what surprised Daniel most was not the cheering or the music. It was the sudden realization that for the first time in months, he felt something other than grief. Not romance, not excitement, just connection. Something simple, human. Time passed slowly while the crowd counted seconds and laughed at the ridiculousness of the game. Some couples had already lost earlier rounds within moments, bursting into laughter. But Daniel and Emily stayed focused, partly because they were both stubborn, and partly because they both knew someone very important was watching. Lily stood at the front of the stage, cheering louder than anyone. Her father noticed, and something inside him shifted. For months he had been surviving. Tonight he remembered what it felt like to live. Eventually the host called time. The crowd roared. Daniel and Emily had lasted longer than anyone else that night. They had won. The host handed them the prize basket and announced the resort trip while the crowd applauded enthusiastically. Daniel stepped off the stage feeling dizzy from the sudden attention. Lily ran toward him and hugged him tightly. Her laughter was brighter than any prize. Emily watched from a few steps away, smiling softly, but the real surprise came afterward. Instead of walking separate ways, Daniel and Emily ended up sitting at the same picnic table while Lily excitedly explored the gift basket items. They talked. At first it was small talk about the fair, the town, and the absurdity of the contest. But slowly the conversation deepened. Daniel shared pieces of his story. Emily shared hers. Two strangers who had walked onto a stage for a silly dare discovered that they understood each other in ways neither expected. They didn't promise anything. They didn't rush into anything. But when the night ended, Daniel realized something important. For the first time since losing his wife, the future didn't feel empty. It felt possible. Weeks later, Daniel and Lily used the resort voucher. Emily joined them for part of the trip, not as a replacement for the past, not as a perfect ending, but as the beginning of something new. Sometimes life doesn't change because of big plans or dramatic decisions. Sometimes it changes because of small, unexpected moments. A dare at a fair, a stranger stepping forward, a simple act of kindness. Before we reach the end of this story, here's a special request. Comment below with the word hope if you believe that even after the hardest moments in life, something beautiful can still happen. Because Daniel learned something that night. Grief doesn't disappear overnight, but life has a strange way of opening doors when we least expect it. A single father walked onto a stage thinking he was participating in a silly challenge. He walked off realizing that his story wasn't over, and maybe, just maybe, another chapter was waiting. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, leave a comment, share it with someone who might need a reminder that life can surprise us, and subscribe for more emotional stories like this. Because sometimes the smallest moments change everything.